Hi everyone, welcome to Play Hooky with me. My name is Roz, and in today's video I want to share how to do the corner to corner granny square. This is a versatile and easy stitch that is ideal for baby blankets and specialty blankets like a temperature blanket that is so popular at this time of year. In this video, I'll share how to make a standard square as well as the rectangle. Both are very simple to do and easy to adapt to your needs. Along the way, I'll also share some tips on how to deal with all the ends if you decide to do multiple colors like you see here. As a little bonus, I'll share how to create a simple border for your blanket to be either used to finish your blanket or to be the foundation base for a more elaborate border. As always, there are timestamps below to jump to your point of interest, so yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Measuring for this is very simple to do. You're essentially going to decide how big you want your blanket to be and then work from there. For example, if you're wanting to make a square throw and you decide you want your blanket to be 5 by 5, you would just be working from corner to corner, just in a diagonal, back and forth, until you reach the width of your blanket. And then you'll start decreasing to finish the other side. Same with the rectangle. You'll just start in one corner, working on the diagonal until you reach your width, and then you'll continue on to get the length. And that's super easy. I'm going to show you how to do that in the coming sections. To begin, put a slip knot on your hook. We're going to be working on our first row, our first block. We're going to begin in a corner with rows. This is row 1, row 2, row 3, and so on. I'm going to use the term granny cluster. Granny cluster just represents 3 double crochets, and that's what we're using here to build the blanket, just granny clusters on the diagonal. So to build your very first cluster in row 1, chain 4. Working into the first chain, create a slip stitch to form a ring. Okay, to create that first cluster, we're going to do 5 double crochets. The first one will be a chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Now 4 double crochets in that same circle. Make sure you have 5 double crochets. Remember, the first chain 3 represents your first double. What I really want you to see here is that you've created your 3 double crochet cluster and 2 posts on the side. This is going to give you little areas on each side to build your clusters into. So row 1 is done. Chain 3. Turn. And now you're getting ready to work on row 2. So we've chained up. The chain 3 represents a double crochet. Now we're going to be working a cluster into that space on the side as well as on this other side to make our 2 for the next row. The key with this blanket is to remember that on the ends or the sides, you're going to be doing 4 double crochets each time on both of the sides. That's because you're doing the granny cluster as well as a post to hold your next group of clusters. This will make total sense the more we go along. We've done the chain 3 to represent the first double crochet. Let's do 3 more. Okay, we have 4 in total. That's because we're on the side. Now again, we're on another side. We're already finished with row 2, so we're going to do 4 double crochets on this side as well. Chain 3, turn. Now we're going to start building our normal clusters, our standard clusters on these center parts. So now we're doing 3 more double crochets to make a total of 4 on the side. So with row 3, now we're going to start seeing the gaps and spaces in between. And that's where we just do our standard granny cluster, which is 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. We're back to a side. Remember, we do 4 double crochets on the sides. That's because we're building our posts. 4, and you should have something that looks like this now. We're finished with row 3, so it's time to start row 4. Chain up 3 and turn. We're on the side, so we're doing 4 in total. Remember that first 3 represents your first double crochet. Great. And now we have 2 spaces, so we're just going to fill those with our granny clusters. 3 double crochets. 4 double crochets. Okay. And that is all there is to building your blanket, really. You're just going to keep doing this until you reach the width that you want your blanket to be. So if you want to make a 4x5 blanket, for example, go until you reach the 4 foot. What you're going to do is you're going to, before you start on your next row with your next color, you're going to pull this back to where you have 2 loops on your hook. You're going to finish that stitch with your new color. Give yourself a pretty good tail. I'll show you why in a moment. Loop through, and then before you continue on, go ahead and snip the previous color. And I like to knot the 2 tails together. Now before I get started on that next round, I take a quick pause, and here's my tip for weaving. I go ahead and weave in that previous color first before I continue on. It really is worth it because if you're doing a stripy blanket, you're going to have a lot of ends to deal with. The reason I like to do this also is because I can weave it into this top row here that the next color is going to be working into. That's just for added assurance, and it just kind of camouflages it all along the way. Weave along in that top loop on that previous row. Just looping it. Now I'm getting ready to work my next row. I'm not going to worry about weaving in this tail until later. I'm going to do the same process once I have that other row that I can use to camouflage it. So leave it there for now. Chain 3, turn, and continue working as you were. Find that first space between the post and the 3 double crochets. Build your side. Remember, we're doing 4 double crochets total on the sides and 3 in the centers, and continuing on. And then again, I do take the time to take care of these ends now because I can just incorporate it into those stitches. I just come back before I work another row. I just come in and deal with this tail now. I found this is just such a time saver in the long run because you will have a lot of ends to weave in if you decide to do something like a temperature blanket or something where you're dealing with a lot of stripes. Decreasing is very easy to do. Once you've worked your blanket to the width that you want it to be, you would just keep going in your diagonals until you reach that width. Then it's time to decrease to finish off your square. So you're going to chain 3 as you normally would, turn, but instead of working into that first space, you're going to skip that and you're going to go straight into that next space with your cluster. That's all there is to it. Okay? And it will look like this. This is your first corner that you're making. Continue on the rest of the row as you normally would, creating your normal granny clusters. And when you reach the next side, instead of doing 4 double crochets on this side, you'll just do 1. Okay? And you'll have something that looks like this. You're just going to keep repeating this each row. Chain 3, turn. Okay, again, just completely ignore this gap here. Just come right over to your cluster space here and continue on. Work across as you normally would. Again, on the very edge, just 1 double crochet. I find with the decreasing that it's very easy to forget to skip that first cluster area there. And even more so, it's very hard to remember here to just do the 1. So just double check each time when you're finished to just make sure that you've reduced. For me, the best tip I can give for that is to just always count your clusters to make sure that they're going down in the proper order. Then you'll just fasten off as you normally would, weave in your ends, and you're good to go. Okay, let's say now that you want to make a rectangle shape instead of a square. You're going to be working this slightly differently. I would recommend that you get yourself a stitch marker or just a scrap of yarn, something just to mark your way along as you go. Essentially with the rectangle, all that's happening is you're going to stop growing on one side. You're going to build one side and stop completely on the other. Just like with the square, you're going to focus on the width side of your blanket. Once you've built your blanket to the width that you want it to be, then we're going to focus on the length. So let me show you with a finished piece. So let's say, for example, this is just a mini version of a rectangle blanket. I've been working on the diagonal. I've reached my 4-foot mark or whatever I want my width to be. And now I'm going to essentially stop growing on one side and continue growing on the other. Okay, so this is what it will look like. You've started on this corner, you've reached your width, Go ahead and place your stitch marker here. It doesn't matter where you put your stitch marker here, you're just trying to show yourself your width side. Chain up 3 as you normally would. Turn. Now instead of building, you're not growing your blanket anymore, you're stopping the growth on that side. You're going to skip and go straight into this next space to create a normal granny cluster. Continue on as you normally would. Okay, we're coming towards the end here. This is where the marker comes in very handy. The marker is helping us to remember that we just need to know in our heads, okay, this side we've stopped growing, but this side we're growing as normal. So in that space on the edge, we're going back to our normal 4 double crochets. And 4. Okay. Chain 3 and turn. And again, you're continuing on as you normally would. You're going to keep building your blanket. So in that very first little space there, you're going to make your 4 double crochets. Okay, and then just continue on as you normally would. And now I'm coming back to the side with the marker. So I know this is my decreasing side. So I'm not going to add a cluster here. I'm going to do 1 double crochet, just as if we were decreasing. Chain 3, turn, skip that space, and go straight over to this space here for the next cluster and continue on as normal. And then again, if I'm still building my blanket, And see, I don't have the marker on this side, so I know I can continue building my rectangle. So I'm putting my 4 DCs in that space there at the end. Okay. And this is what it will be looking like. Okay, so we keep doing this until we reached our length. For example, if you're working on a 4x5, you've got your 4-foot width here. You're building this until you hit your 5 foot. And once you have, now it's time to decrease. And it's just the same as with the square. You're going to say, okay, I'm good, I'm done. And chain 3. Turn. Skip that space because you're not growing anymore. You're going to go right over to the gap and do your normal cluster. And you know what, I'm taking that guy out because we're done and he's making a lot of noise. Okay, where was I? One more. Continue all the way down as you normally would with your granny clusters. 3 DCs in each space. Now we've come to the end, and try your best to remember to do just 1 double crochet instead of a cluster, because you're decreasing on both sides now. Okay, so chain 3. Turn, skipping that gap, going into the next cluster space, and then just keep continuing this until you reach the final corner. We're at the end here with a final double crochet to finish. And for the math for this, once you've decided to create your rectangle, your clusters are going to be the same width across. This is where I decided, okay, I'm going to do a rectangle from now on. So I want to see 5 clusters all the way across until I decide to decrease. So once I decide to decrease, I want to see my clusters going from 5 down to 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. I did it correctly. I thought some of you might be interested on how to create a border for your blanket once you're finished. This is just a very simple single crochet border. You can finish your blanket like this, or you can use this for a foundation to build a fancier border. So very briefly, I essentially did 2 single crochets in all the gaps on the sides, and then 3 single crochets in each corner. First, I decided where I wanted my corners to be. You kind of just have to fiddle with it and decide, okay, here's a good place for a corner, and so on all the sides. Because there really isn't a really distinct area. Like this one, for example, not very clear, so I just kind of fudged it a little bit and decided, okay, there's my corner. Once I did that, I decided those are where my 3 single crochets will go. Then in all of these gaps, I did 2 single crochets, and that was it. And that's how I came up with my border for this. Now, if you're finding that it's puckering too much, if it's pulling up or too tight, add some single crochets in there. Or if it's too wavy, take some out.